and welcome. And I don't know what is the witching hour when we are joined up around the globe. Here it's definitely dark. It's 7:30 plus, and we did hear a dog rather mysteriously bark. I don't know where that was. It's not in my space. Was it in yours? And it's wonderful that we are gathered this evening or today to share some stories for a point of view that have perhaps a supernatural connection. We were just talking before we started about how scary we want it to be, or do we have to think of this in terms of being scary, or perhaps more in terms of the supernatural. I think it is a particularly difficult genre for us as storytellers to play, because if you are really so scary that you make somebody kind of wet themselves, then no parent's going to be happy with that. And yet, if at the same time you do something that just has a joke ending, then perhaps the really serious people who are looking to be scared will be very disappointed. So if you have a trades description act in your country, then be very careful about how you market your ghost story or that kind of performance. So with that caution in mind, I'm delighted that we do have 5 or 6 brave souls who are going to share with us a story this evening. We've already had one victim because we found that 2 people wanted to share the same story, which was not a good idea at all. So we have disposed of one of the tellers. Not really. She's very kindly decided that she would give way so that we didn't have to chop her head off. But so anyway, we're going to start, therefore, with that story. And it's my pleasure to welcome Vibun. Where are you?
Good evening.
Emerging out of the darkness. Okay.
Very, very good evening. I hope I'm clearly audible.
You are clearly audible and barely visible, which is quite magnificent. Yes, yes.
Mr. Oliver. Mr. Oliver was a teacher of English in the Anglo-Indian school of Shimla in India. He considered himself to be a very brave man of a very firm composition, of a very strong composition. Daily, when he would go home, he would take a shortcut through the forest. Humming to himself, he would cover the entire area merrily. But presently, there were certain rumors in the region saying there's something very, very fishy in the forest. There is something very, very sneaky in the forest. But Mr. Oliver, brave as he was, didn't pay heed to any such nonsense. It was the day prior to Halloween, and Mr. Oliver was late at work, and it was 11:30 p.m. He stepped out of his school, he took out his torch, and then he started to go towards the forest, humming to himself merrily and happily. But to his surprise, the lights of his torch, they started flickering. And Mr. Oliver, strict as he was a bit annoyed at the firms that produced the batteries of the torch. And he said, "Oh, look at these torches and these batteries. Just a couple of weeks ago, I changed them and now they have run out. I am sick and tired of these firms. They take too much and they give meager in return." And Mr. Oliver, blessed by the moonlight, he decided to cover the entire pack track with the light from the moon. He was walking and humming to himself. Now, as I told earlier, that there were certain rumors in the forest. His light was still tickling, and his light was still flickering. But the rumors, they started coming true when Mr. Oliver started hearing certain spooky and sneaky noises from the forest. But Mr. Oliver, as I told earlier, brave as he was, he didn't pay attention to any of that nonsense and he continued to move. In the distance, Mr. Oliver heard a little bit of disturbance, the sobbing and crying of a little boy. Mr. Oliver approached that figure silhouetted on a rock and he said, "What is it, boy? What are you doing at this hour?" As I've told you before, Mr. Oliver was pretty strict and he said, "What are you doing here, boy, at this hour? You are supposed to be in your hostel and look at your nails, how shabby they look. Your nails are too big and where have you been playing with red color? They are all dipped in red color. And look at your hair, they look like bushes. How have you come overgrown these so many?" But the boy still continued to sob, his head covered with his hand. Mr. Oliver got a bit agitated at the fact that a boy of his own school did not pay attention, did not listen to the orders given by Mr. Oliver. The sounds were still continuing in the distance. And Mr. Oliver said, "Boy, get up now, sit up." And Mr. Oliver shone his torch on the face of the boy, and to his surprise, the light gleamed and glimmered. But suddenly, he dropped his torch, because when the boy removed his hand from his face, if you had been there, you couldn't have called it a face, for it had no features. Yes, it had no features. That face had no eyes, no ears, no nose, no mouth, no ears. That boy wasn't an ordinary boy. He was a phantom. He was a ghost. He was a spook. He was a ghost, that boy. And he said, Mr. Oliver, he dropped his torch and he started running. He ran through the forest. He ran away from the forest. He started chasing down and back the pack track. And Mr. Oliver, in the distance, saw a lantern. He saw a lantern in the distance dangling in midair. And he said, "What is that?" That lantern approached him and he said, Who are you? Who are you?" The lantern was still there in the distance. The lantern was coming towards himself, and Mr. Oliver said, the lantern went off, and Mr. Oliver said, "Who is it? Who is it?" That was the watchman of the same school in which Mr. Oliver taught, and he said, calm down, Sahib. What is it? Tell me your problem. What is it?" And Mr. Oliver said, Watchman, go over there. See at the back. There is a boy. There is a boy who has a face, but he has no face. He has a face, but that face has no features. Mr. Watchman, go and look at the face. Go and look at the. Calm down, Sahib," said the watchman. He said, "Mr. Oliver, do you think that the face of the man was somewhat like this?" And he brought the lantern close to his face, and again the lantern went off. But now Mr. Oliver saw something peculiar, for the same watchman had no face. He had a face, but he had no face. He had a face, but he had no face. He had a face, but he had no face. His face had no eyes, no nose, no mouth, no ears. It had no features, as smooth as a ball. And Mr. Oliver ran from the forest. And I leave it on to you, my dear friends, to deduce and mark my words, to deduce mark, and write the tale and the fate of Mr. Oliver. And that is the end of my story. I hope you liked it. Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah, I like the way you used the light or the lack of light. Okay, you'd obviously given that a lot of thought, and particularly, you know, when you moved away and the light kind of, and then you were kind of merging in, you know, in and out of the shadow. I think that's possible. I'm a bit of a fan of masks. I have quite a large collection of masks, and have used to perform with them, both full face and half face, kind of commedia dell'arte. And I was wondering, I just think maybe you might like to think about that, because it's a strong piece. It's of a good length. That if you were to have a featureless mask, because the way that you're doing it, you could easily walk away into the darkness, put this on, and then as only at the end for the last one, when the man with the lantern, you know, the custodian, as it were, and then he comes in. And I think you could play around a lot more with your proximity to the camera. Okay, that the distortion that you're looking for, the disturbing quality in this, you're playing at a very kind of safe distance from the camera all the time. And I think it would really play. And maybe, you know, also that you don't always have to be straight on, that having this kind of different off angles too might be. I don't know if are you working with a laptop or with a desktop?
Desktop, desktop.
Okay, so that you can't move around, in which case you need to move around. If you're on the laptop, then you can do more things here, you know, with it.
I
I
see,
would
I
say,
see.
I just think that could be a very shocking surprise when you out of the darkness you say, you mean, was it something like this? And I love again the having the flickering light, which is nice. But then your face comes in, and then it's gone, and then it's come back again. You know, you could just really play with that. And again, it doesn't have to be the full face. It could be, you could do a half reveal, this kind of thing. You know, because it's got a nice
Was it
light, and
something
the
like
lack of
this?
light really works very well. I don't know if anybody else wants to chip in.
Really felt very spooky. I mean, I like the lighting effects which he had tried. I have no clue how he did all that, but no, it felt like real Halloween kind of a story. Lovely,
Mm.
wonderful vibe.
Yeah, that was an improvisation I did right now because you see, there's a bit of renovation work going on in my house, so I couldn't prepare much. Otherwise, it could I mean I could have been a bit better.
Mm. Again, there's the possibility of there was somebody else in the room with you at one
Yes,
point.
yes. That was my dad. He came in and he disturbed the entire thing.
Yeah, but you know that because again there was a bit of a door or something, a window to
Yeah,
one
that was a
side.
window. Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
if you have something moving in the darkness behind you while you're telling, so that, you know, if you've got a sibling who you can trust to do that, you know, or someone who can be in, having the one time when I'm really managed to scare somebody, this was a campfire on a beach, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. And I told a story, and this was to a group of maybe 14, 15-year-olds. And I'm telling the story, and I got one of the other teachers. I was a teacher in those days. I didn't think of myself as a storyteller. I said, just cradle a pack of ice in your hand. And then at the end of the story, this dragon that was devouring and killing people quite spectacularly had flown away and had disappeared. And I said, you know, and no one knows when it'll come back. And you'll never know, because the first thing that you'll know is that it's behind you, and you'll feel its cold, clammy paw resting upon the back of your neck. And I told the person, my friend, the teacher, when I said that, and he then took his hand that had been cradling the ice for the past 20 minutes and put it on the back of this girl's neck. And she absolutely just went through the roof. She screamed. And of course, when she screamed, and it was really she was totally believable. Everybody else just went, and people got up and they were running, and it was a good job nobody ran through the fire. So having an assistant there might be just to help, because I think you've got actually a really good party piece that you could develop very nicely there. And it's obviously a very well-known story, I assume, within India, because this is Ruskin Bond, is it?
Yeah, I forgot to tell. Yeah, that is A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond.
Yeah. So I think he's very popular, and I think you should almost develop that as a party piece. Well done. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that set the bar for the rest of us, hasn't it? Eh? Okay. So Ambuja, do you want to run away screaming and say no, I can't follow that?
No, after that real spooky Halloween story, this is the Kiran kind of story. A funny ghost story, actually. So I get scared when I tell real ghost stories. So I would prefer funny stories. Whatever be the character, it turns out funny.
Okay, very good.
நாம் வாழ்ந்த வாழ்க்கைக்கு தான் சான்றாவது கற்றுத்தரும் வித்தைதானே கிளியே, கற்றுத்தரும் வித்தைதானே கிளியே, போனாலும் வாழ்ந்திடுமே போயிரே, போனாலும் வாழ்ந்திடுமே. Once upon a time, there lived Raju and Rani. They fell in love with each other and decided to get married. And to start their life, above everything, they needed lots of money. Raju set out on a mission to meet the king and get lots of money. He started his journey. Ta-na-na, 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 na-na-na, na-na-na, na-na. He had to cross the forest. Ta-na-na-na, na-na-na, na-na-na, and that's when he heard this voice. Na-na-na-na-na. Please, can you help me? Raju looked here, he looked there, he looked everywhere, but he couldn't see anyone. Who's that? Me on top of the tree. Here, people call me a ghost. Ghost? I'll run away. Please don't harm me. No, ghost. No. Please don't run away. I won't harm you. I need a help from you, please. Help? From me? What kind of help? You know what? I was a great singer. Like any other artist, I had a little bit of ego. I never shared anything that I learned. And for that, I was cursed to live in this tree forever and ever and ever. Okay, but this tree looks quite cozy. Ghosts are supposed to live in trees. What's your problem? The problem, you know what? There's a temple nearby, and 6 o'clock, this man comes there, takes out his instrument, and he starts playing it. Ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba. You know what? I have been listening to wonderful music throughout my life. And this horrible music, I cannot tolerate, and it does something to me. Please help me escape from this place, please. Okay, I get that, but what do I get in return? The princess, I'll go possess the princess. Once you come, I'll leave the princess, the king will be happy and he will reward you. What do you say? And that sounded like a great plan to Raju. So Raju decided to help the ghost. The ghost and Raju entered the kingdom. The princess was happily strolling in the garden. Oh, butterfly, butterfly, sweet little ones, cute little ones, na 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 na. Na na na, na na na, na na na, na na na, butterfly, butterfly, butterfly. And she fell fell down unconscious. The king was worried. He called for lots of magician doctors, but no use. And that's when Raju went there, went to the prince's chamber, met the ghost. Hi, ghosty bestie, I'm here. Now you can leave. The ghost and Raju high-fived, and the ghost left the princess. The king was very happy and he rewarded Raju with so much of money. Raju started his journey back to meet Rani. Oh Rani, I'm on my way to see you, Rani. I can't wait. I can't wait to meet you, my dear. Raju, stop! Came a soldier. Raju, wait. The princess is fine. But you know what? The queen, she has the same problem and the king wants you back. Raju went back. One look at the queen and he understood it's the same ghost. Ghosty bestie, why are you here? You should have left by now. No way. I like this place so much. The tree full of thorns and not at all comfortable. This queen, cushiony, very happy, a nice food, a nice music. I'm going to stay here forever and ever and ever. No, you can't do that. This is not fair. What's not fair? You did a favor and I returned it back. Equal. I'm staying here. You can do whatever you can. Tara bye-bye, see you. Raju came to the king. Your Majesty, this is a little bit complicated. Give me a couple of days and I'll come back. He went, returned after a couple of days, went to the queen and spoke to the ghost. I accept my defeat. I'm going to surrender to the king and I'm leaving back. But before I leave, I want to gift you something. Oh boy, that's a good decision. Okay, where's my gift? Can you please close your eyes? Okay, I'll close my eyes and give me my gift and you can leave. He closed his eyes. Raju gestured and this man entered. He took out his bag, opened it, took out the instrument slowly, placed it on his lips, and he started. Pa-pa-pam-pa! Oh no! What's this, Raju? Pa-pa-pam-pa! Raju, ask him to stop. I can't listen to this music. But you said you'll stay here forever and ever and ever. Oh no, Raju, please, I'm leaving the queen. Ask him to stop. Leave the queen and go trouble someone else? No, I'm not troubling anyone. Please ask him to stop. The ghost left the queen and he never returned back. And like all beautiful stories end, Raju and Rani lived happily ever after. Each life leaves a proof. Once we leave the roof, knowledge when it is shared with everyone. Knowledge when it is shared with everyone speaks for us after we leave. What we share speaks for us after we leave. And this story is my adaptation of Sri A.K. Ramanujam's The Musical Demon. And this story was introduced with embellishments by dear Jiva to me. Thank you.
I love it. Wonderful. Yeah. And if when you look at the chat afterwards, Ambuja, because we loved your transition, how you did the possession of the princess by the ghost. That was just fabulous. And it's a story that you, again, beautiful delivery.
Good question. Maybe I should begin at the beginning. And maybe then you'll believe what I'm saying. It happened. It all began on the day I met Elijah. Ah, Elijah, the most beautiful woman. She's tall, stately, regal. So beautiful. Her hair fell down in these curls around her shoulders. And her lips, her mouth was like heaven. And her skin was ivory, marble. High forehead, aquiline nose. She's just beautiful. But the most beautiful feature, I tell you, is if you looked into her eyes, her eyes were like the eyes of a gazelle of the tribe of Nurjahad. She was, I cannot describe to you the beauty of Elijah. I can't do it. You just have to imagine the houri of a Turk. I fell in love the first day I met her. The day I set eyes on her, I fell in love with her. And we talked and we walked in that city the decaying city by the Rhine. Doesn't matter what city it was. We just made it our own. We walked and we discussed everything. And we could talk as if we were one person. We talked about transcendentalism. Imagine. I mean, Elijah knew everything. She'd read every book on transcendentalism. Can you imagine that? The occult. Death. We talked about death. We talked about immortality. She had the greatest range of learning. She wasn't just listening to me. She talked. She knew. She'd read those books. I tell you, it was like two souls that were one. I know all lovers say that. You've heard that often. But I'm telling you, this was something once in a lifetime. And the happiest day of my life was the day we got married. Those days were just bliss. They just went by, years and years. Talking, walking, being together. I'd be poring over a book in my library, and I wouldn't even hear a footfall. And then there was her hand on my shoulder and her eyes looking down at mine, and such love in her eyes. That memory just stays with me. Love, I tell you, it's the greatest miracle. I don't know if you've experienced it. It's the greatest miracle. It's nothing compares. But it was too good to last. She began to fall sick. She faded away. Those dark eyes, those black eyes, they lost luster. Her skin became paler. I didn't know what to do. I called for the doctor. I did everything I could do, but she was just fading away in front of me. I thought all her learning, all her wisdom would reconcile her to death. It didn't. She resisted death. She wanted to live. There was a longing for life, a wild desire to keep living. And you know what? Part of that longing was because of me. She wanted to live. She wanted to stay with me. And I wanted her to stay. Forgive me. Every time I think of it, so many days have gone by. I wanted her to stay too. And she would talk so foolishly. She would say that we only die because of a weakness of will. Yes, she had a very strong will. But death cannot be denied. So Elijah died. I think I just went crazy. I don't even remember what happened after that. I moved away from that city, from that place, everything that reminded me of her, every room, every nook, every cranny, everything, every interest, everything that reminded me of her. I moved away. I came to this abbey in England. It doesn't really matter where. Let me tell you, I did it up. I did it up with Egyptian carvings and with Indian Ottomans and African masks, and I did it up like a, I don't know what I was trying to do. Was I trying to forget her? Of course I was trying to forget her. What do you think this was? Child's play? A love like I have known, a grief that I had known and I'd lost it? Of course I wanted to forget it. It was driving me mad. And in that moment of madness, you know what I did? I remarried. Such a fool. The love that I had known, which woman could have matched up to it? And you know who I married? I married the lady Revina Tremaine. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Yes, I suppose you're right. I was trying to find somebody as different from my Elijah as I could. And you know what? I succeeded. She was poles apart. She was everything that Elijah was not. Elijah, the rare, the loved one. I loathed my new wife, and she feared me. She feared my moodiness, my temper tantrums. And what kind of greed was it that made her family deliver her over to a monster such as I had become? Ah, yes. Yes, I think I had become a monster. The grief had driven me mad. I took to opium to numb the pain. Opium was doing its own damage. I wasn't the man I had once been. And the Lady Tremaine, she just withered away in the full blast of my hatred and repulsion from her. She just withered away. And then she was dying. Can you imagine? She was dying too. Second time, I'm here at the deathbed. My second wife lying on the deathbed. And you know who I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Lygia. And my wife, she said, there's somebody in the room here. I can feel it. There's someone here. And I can hear something. No. Don't you understand? She was sick. She was dying. It was all fancies in her mind. There was nobody there. So that the doctor had recommended. I went over and poured out a goblet full of wine. But as I went, I felt footsteps overtake me. And I saw the shadow of a shadow on the carpet. Now, I was imagining it. So I took the goblet of wine and gave it to my wife. And she gulped it down. But just before she took a sip, I could see brilliant red ruby drops fall into that goblet. I wanted to stop her. I did want to stop her, but she drank it down. Nothing happened. Not that night. Not the next night. It took her 4 nights to die. But yes, I was sitting here watching her die. And I was thinking, I was not thinking, I was going crazy because I was thinking still of Lygia and how she had died and how I'd sat right by her bedside watching her die. All those memories came flooding back to me and I just sat there letting that grief that I had run away from to soak into me. And finally, I was accepting it. and the Lady Trevane died. I didn't do anything. I just sat by her deathbed, waiting for dawn. And then I heard a sigh. It wasn't possible. Was she alive? Had I been premature in deciding that she's dead? I tried to warm her hands. I saw there was a little color on her face, but her body was stiff and cold. She was dead. So I went back to my thoughts, and my thoughts, I must tell you, weren't of her. They were of Lygia. Lygia! Will this pain never go away? Doctor, do you know that? Does this stay with you forever? Then I heard a sob. I looked around me. This is coming from the deathbed. I looked at her. Her lips were trembling. Was she alive or was she dead? And then she was stiff and cold again. No, she was dead. Probably had too much opium. Alive, dead, alive, dead, alive, dead. This horror of revivification went on all through the night. I just sat back in my chair. I closed my eyes and I said, I'll just wait for the morning to come before I decide what's going on. But this time, it was unmistakable. The shuffle of feet. And I opened my eyes and I saw this enshrouded creature walking to the center of the room. And a wild thought came to me. A wild, wild thought. Could it be? No, this was Ravenna. But then, had she grown taller as she lay on her deathbed? A strange, I can't tell you, you'll think I'm crazy, but a strange thought came to me, and I leapt out of my chair and I pulled away at the shroud, and black curls came rolling down, and any doubt I might have had was removed completely when her eyes opened, and I saw myself looking into the black, midnight black, raven black eyes of my Lygia.
Wow, that was some performance. My goodness. And it's strange. In a way, I'm almost tempted to say that you should go away and remove the makeup so that we can talk to you, yes, as Vanita and not as this character, because you were so convincing as the character. For you now to try and talk about it as you, the storyteller, I don't know, I think that might kind of shatter the illusion for people. I thought the look was astonishing. It was so convincing. You were so believable. The questions that I would ask, how much of that is like, memorized and is really the story, and how much is you telling that? If you were to tell us it again, would it be very much the same, or is it kind of memorized?
Well, I didn't memorize it. What I did was actually draw it out. So I drew out and I just kept it so that I would remember the critical scenes. So I drew out, on paper, and then I didn't memorize it so there is that worry that will I lose out some critical thing, but I didn't memorize it. I wanted to tell it as him, as it happened to him. So, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Again, it speaks to me because I was in theatre, and I guess my first attempts at storytelling was very much doing kind of like character monologues, which is what this is very
Okay.
much. That you
Mhm.
create this character and totally believable. I think that on the one hand, it works really well for this kind of talking to the camera, and you did that beautifully, particularly at the moments of high drama. I thought that your relationship with us and the camera was really strong. Though I think possibly because you're in this setting, that you would take you could give it more room to breathe. I think you could slow it down because
Okay.
it's such
Okay.
a powerful piece. And I think you
Okay.
that some of the thought changes, you could give yourself a little more time to
Okay.
play that. I think it would work really well on stage too, in a small theater, in a small kind of venue. Do you have other
Oh,
pieces?
wonderful. How lovely.
Is
Huh.
this the kind of, I mean, have you other characters that you've created? Have you got other stories that are kind of this kind of thing, a monologue?
I'm
Have you
trying
got,
to now work on this. I've decided this is what I want to do. This is the way I want to
yeah,
go. Yeah.
excellent. Really,
Thank you
really
so much.
strong, totally unexpected piece. Loved
Thank
it.
you.
Loved it. Yeah. Yeah. We are on a roll tonight. We've had three such totally different pieces, all of outstanding quality. Okay. So now, without having, putting any pressure on you at all, Miss Kirk, I'm delighted to go over to Lynn in Hong Kong. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's better.
Oh, you could hear me, could you?
Yeah, now.
Oh, okay, right.
Better
Oh,
now.
Yeah, that's better.
okay. Right. This story is very, very short. There are two versions, but I'm going to tell you the slightly shorter version because it suits itself for younger children rather than making it a bit more adult-like.
Okay.
So there was this worrist because she wanted to dig up some roots to eat.
Hmm.
And while she was digging away and humming along, singing a song, when suddenly she came across something quite big. And when she picked it up, it was very fleshy. It was very hairy. And when she looked closely, it was a big, hairy toe. Oh, she said, there's plenty of meat on that. I'll save that and have it for me dinner tomorrow. So she took it home. Now, I don't know why, but maybe in that part of the world people do this. But for some strange reason, she put the hairy toe underneath her pillow and went to bed. Well, there she was, sleeping soundly, when all of a sudden the wind got up and started to blow around the house. And she thought when she was hearing the wind, she thought she could hear a voice. And it was sort of saying something like, "Who's got my big hairy?" Well, she felt a bit cold after that, so she snuggled down underneath the covers a bit more. But the wind got stronger and started rattling around at the windows and through the door. And the wind got stronger and the voice got stronger, and the voice came out again saying, "Who's got my big hairy toe?" Well, she covered herself up even further. Now the blankets were up to her nose, but the windows were rattling, they almost blew open. The door was banging so much that almost blew open. And once again, the wind was so loud. She could hear it calling out again, "Who's got my big hairy toe?" And then all of a sudden, the wind was so strong. It blew open the windows, it blew open the door, and then she could hear the sounds of footsteps coming up the stairs. Her bedroom door opened, and then she felt somebody sit down on her bed. And when she covered herself up totally, so she couldn't see anything, all of a sudden, 2 hands got hold of the covers and pulled them down. And while they were pulling them down, they called out, "Who's got my big hairy toe? You've got my big hairy toe." And she got the pillow. She got her toe back and flew out of the window. And that is something that you had better not do yourselves. If you find hairy toes, leave them where they are. Don't have them for dinner. The end.
Very good. I love it, Lynn. I love it. Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure this is a story that is being told up and down the length of England. Now that Boris Johnson has decided that there'll be no free lunches for children coming up to Christmas, and that children everywhere will be looking for big hairy toes to eat. So it's a good thing, a timely reminder. We can rely on Kirk to keep the children in line. I loved it. Totally loved it, Lynn. Very nice. Good one. Okay.
No,
Yeah. Thank you very much
she didn't
indeed.
fly away with the pillow. Just flew away with the toe.
Just exactly. Flew away with the toe. Brilliant. Okay. I can't imagine what the longer version is. Okay. A big hairy leg, is it, instead of a big hairy toe? Brilliant. Thank you very much. And that actually, it works. Your voice is so distinctive and just so much part of the way that you tell. And it just really did improve the quality no end, taking out the video. So thanks, Lynn. That was good. Good suggestion. Thank you, Sheila. Okay, now we are moving on to Banali. This is your debut, isn't it, for Feast?
Yes, that's
It
right.
is. Welcome. So come on, because we've been hearing story after story after story. Let's just have a little chit chat. Where are you in India?
I'm at Hyderabad.
In Hyderabad. Oh my goodness me. Okay, yes. That seems to have its own little thriving community of storytellers.
Yes.
Very good. And so how have you been doing? Have you managed to get some performances, or has COVID really kind of wiped out your work?
No, I'm actually working in Oracle. Yeah, I am into technical writing. I'm a manager
Okay.
here in the documentation team. This is my hobby, storytelling. And I surely want to move into this completely at one point. So I have just, over the past 3 years, I had been doing, but not online much. I used to do a lot of storytelling in schools.
Yeah.
But then now I started doing it online, of course, even with schools and in these.
Yeah. Sure. Very good. Okay. Well, listen, thank you for joining us, and do share your story.
Yes. So this is a story written by Satyajit Ray. Mriganko Babu was a renowned writer of West Bengal. He was traveling from a small village of West Bengal to his hometown, which is Kolkata. He was coming in car with his driver, Sudhir. And as he was traveling, he was going by a countryside. And he was kind of mesmerized by the beauty of the nature. This was the first time he had so much, relaxing time to spend. So he just lowered the the glass of the car door, and he was enjoying the cool breeze touching his face. He was listening to the call from that unknown bird from far end of the village. Coo, 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 coo. This was the winter season, and the time was at around 4 o'clock. The sun was setting down, so the sky became almost golden orange in color. What a feast to the eyes. Men and women were busy harvesting crops, and in villages, when they harvest, they sing lovely songs. The women started. I want you all to clap with me. Gunero mohonai, Agunero mohonai, mon matano mohonai, rongini bihur nishai konna kashe uri jai, Agunero mohonai. To that the men said, Oh, mon hariye jai, mon hariye jai, konnere tor bhabonai, jhilmiliye jai, mon jhilmiliye jai. Phagunero mohonai. And as the car was going ahead, they were noticing that the fields, the vast fields, were looking emptier and emptier. And suddenly, the car stopped. It wouldn't start. Now, Mriganku Babu had an appointment, and he plans to reach by 8 in the night. He was getting restless. What's the matter? Sudhir, why isn't it starting? Now, Sudhir got really scared. Babu, just give me some time. There is some problem. I think the petrol is over and the indicator wasn't working since a few days. Sorry, Babu. I'll go and get petrol. Now stop fumbling. Stop looking at me now. Go and get petrol from wherever you want to go. I want to reach home by 8. Ha, Babu, please wait. You relax. I'll just be back. So Sudhir took out a can and marched towards the nearby village, which is called Panagar, to get petrol. Now Mriganku Babu was getting really bored. He thought, let me just take some fresh air. He just walked out of the car, stretched a bit, looked around, and suddenly he felt haunted. The sky didn't look golden yellow anymore. It was dark and gray. The vast fields were empty. Not a single human being, not a single bird, not a single animal was to be seen. He could only see 2 huts in one corner of the field with no human being out of it or inside. There were some trees around, and when he looked carefully, he saw there was a structure of a scarecrow standing on 2 bamboo sticks, hands wide open. The head was actually a pot upside down. Eyes and nose were drawn with white chalk. He looked at the figure carefully, and he was lost. He was thinking, there is something about it. It seems to attract me. And I have seen it somewhere. And when he looked carefully, he saw it was the shirt the scarecrow was wearing. He has seen it somewhere. But I can't recall where exactly I saw it, but I have seen it definitely. And when he was just thinking about it, he heard a strange voice. Babu. Babu. He couldn't believe his ears. He was not a single human being around. Where would somebody call me here? Babu? He just closed his ears, looked around, and this time when he looked at the scarecrow, The hands which were stretched were slowly pointing downwards. The legs looked more real. The head, which was a big earthen pot, became smaller and smaller. And the whole structure started looking more real. And it looked like it was walking towards him. No, this can't be true. Oh my God, what am I imagining? This is what happens when I'm in a haunted place like this alone. Oh my God, he just closed his ears and his eyes just to bring himself to normal. And just when he opened his eyes, Babu, Babu, he was just standing in front of him. Babu, do you remember me, Babu? Riganko Babu looked at him. He says, Obhiram, na? Aren't you Obhiram? Oh, where have you come from? Here? Babu, you recognized me, Babu. After so many years, I'm so happy. Why wouldn't I recognize? I recognized you because of this shirt you are wearing. I gifted you this shirt on my marriage day. Didn't I? Hey, Babu. You took care of me so much, Babu. You loved me so much. But what happened towards the end? Everyone on your marriage day thought that your lost watch was stolen by me. Your father, he threw me out of the house. You didn't trust me. I was okay with no one trusting, but you were standing there, Babu. You didn't even stop your father. I kept telling you, I am not the one. I didn't steal it. You know, Babu, what happened after I came back? I became sick. Very, very sick. I couldn't work anymore, Babu. We didn't have money for food. Forget about buying medicines. And I died. And after my death, my son wore this shirt for a few days. And when it got completely torn, he gave it to the scarecrow, the Kaktarua. The scarecrow wore my shirt and I became the scarecrow. I didn't have peace of mind, Babu. I was waiting for you. I was waiting here that one day you will pass by this road and I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you that I didn't steal, Babu. I'm not the one. You go back home today, Babu, and check under your wardrobe in your bedroom. You will find the golden watch smeared on dust. I am not the thief, Babu, and now I can take rest. Saying this, Obhiram disappeared into the thin air. And just then, another sound came up. Babu! Babu! I got the petrol, and here comes Sudhir, the driver, with a can full of petrol. And he comes inside, gets into the car, and wakes up Mriganko Babu. Babu, get up, get up. He was fast asleep. And then they drove back home. And the first thing Mriganko Babu did after reaching home was he rushed to his bedroom, took a broom, and tried to pull out things from under the wardrobe. And guess what? He found his golden watch, just like he said, Obhiram said. It was smeared with dust. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes. Strangely enough, I'm telling a story with a similar situation at its core. A man is falsely accused at a wedding of stealing, okay? But mine has a happier ending than yours did, okay? It was good that we had a story that sort of just began in a very normal circumstances. You know, you're just driving and then you run out of petrol and then it kind of, yeah. So thank you for that. Thank you. Very good, good. And you'll obviously have to consult the oracle to see if your future is in storytelling. hopefully you'll get a good answer. Thank you. Yeah. And again, I like the play with the camera. It was good.
This was my first attempt to serious storytelling, which is not with kids. I usually do, the kind of storytelling that Ambuja did. I loved hers. So like the lighter ones with kids. So this is the first attempt I did. I just hope I could do something.
Very good, and that's great. And Feast is delighted that we can be a platform that gives people the chance to do that, and it is quite scary. And one of the things that we are kind of considering as a possibility for next year is that we might try and do some of these sessions where we do give tellers the chance to have feedback. Tonight, just because we've had fewer tellers and shorter stories, I've taken some time to kind of talk with the tellers. Normally, we kind of just go barrel straight through one after the other. But I think possibly there is a place, and that there tellers would like to have feedback or suggestions. And
Yes.
certainly we've had that with our group here in Singapore, the storyline. And when people come and they say, look, this is a story that I've been working on, or in your case, here am I telling a story to a different kind of audience from what I normally tell. And so what could I do to make it more age appropriate, and to kind of then field suggestions from people? So this is something that we may look at doing more regularly in 2021.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
If you like, I'll tell you one.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, great. I'm certainly game for that. Hi, how do I pronounce your first name? Is it Peter?
It's like Pather.
Peter, okay. And where are you, Peter?
Sorry?
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm Pather Murphy. I'm in Carryduff near Belfast in Ireland.
The story swap is open to anybody, and it's just delightful. And you heard me just there talking briefly with Annabelle, who's in Buenos Aires, and Ala, who's in Moscow. So these are just people who we've got to know over the past couple of months, which is wonderful. And we're delighted to have you with us.
Of course, in Ireland here, it's 12:30. It's 1:45 now in the day. So it's nice and bright outside. I hope I get my 3-mile walk after this.
So nice.
Very good, very good. Yeah, not the totally wrong time to be telling a creepy story for Halloween, but we'd love to hear you. So why don't you please share your story?
Well, I don't really have a creepy story. Well, the only creepy story I can tell you is that, the one thing about today is there's so much light. We're really overcome with light in the cities, and even anywhere near it in Ireland, because our population is dispersed, and we have these motorways with lights on them and whatnot. But I used to go out to my uncle's farm it was in Crumlin. It's about 10 miles out of Belfast. And when I went out, I stayed there, and I thought I did a work. I thought I helped with the hay. And of course, well, for every bale I put on the trailer, some of the other guys were putting 10 bales on. But I came back home to Belfast after a few weeks thinking I knew all about farming, Since then I've realised that I know a little bit about farming, and that's it. But one of the things was that I would get out sometimes at Halloween, and of course on a Saturday night or some night there'd be people in, and of course they'd tell ghost stories. And that was okay, and it was dark outside. Even when you had to go to the toilet, the toilet, of course, in the 60s in a farmhouse was down the path, So he went out, and anyway, one night he had these guys in, and they were telling ghost stories. So as they went home, he had a big long lane. The lane was about 1/4 of a mile long. So they had to walk up the lane and walk home. because none of them had cars in those days. And they were young ones, so they weren't allowed to bring the tractor around. So, of course, Phil, what he did was, when they were going out the door, Phil grabbed the sheet after telling these stories about people with their heads cut off and everything else. And Phil got the sheet, ran up through the fields, and jumped out on them. And with the sheet over him. And of course, they were so keyed up and all. And kids at that time, we believed more in ghosts than people do now. By Jove, they ran screaming back to the house and banging at the door. And Phil's wife, knew what was happening. So by the time they got back, Phil knew where he was coming. You know, even in the dark, he knew how to jump over the hedges and whatnot. He got back more or less before them. And of course, they started banging on the door, let us in, let us in. And Phil shouts down from upstairs, shouts upstairs, Mommy, Mommy! He called the wife Mommy. That's what some of them do here. Mommy, Mommy, where's the gun? Where's the gun? There's somebody attacking us. There's somebody attacking us. So they were outside, scared to go up. Scared to go up the road in case they'd meet this ghost again. So that was Phil.
Yeah.
But so there you are. That's not the one I had to tell, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. But it actually, at that time, that worked.
Yeah.
You know, it scared the bejesus out of them, as we would say.
I bet. Yes, I loved it. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's worth it just hearing from the accent too. It's great. You want one more?
Yeah, we've got time for one more. 10 minutes more. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So this is a story from Scotland. I'm sorry, it's not from Ireland at all. And I found it in a collection called Freaky Tales. That is written by Hugh Lupton. I think it's a traditional story, and it's called The Strange Visitor. There's a dark, dark wood, and in the middle of that dark, dark wood, there's a dark, dark cottage. And if you go up to that dark, dark cottage, you'll see there's a dark, dark door. And if you dare to go through that dark, dark door, you'll find yourself in a dark, dark room. And in the middle of that room, there's a wee table. And beside the table, there's a wooden rocking chair. And sat in the rocking chair, going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, there's a wee woman. Oh, she's very, very old. She's so old, her face is wrinkled like a winter's apple, you know, the skin so dried and wrinkly. And she sat there, and the room is lit with just one flickering candle. And she's rocking backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And as she's doing that, she's doing a wee bit of sewing. She's got a needle and a thread. And as she sat and as she sewed, she realized she was all alone. And she sat and she sewed and she wished for company. And suddenly, whoosh, the wind blew open that dark, dark door. And the wind came through the door. And with the wind, there came a pair of big, galumphing feet. Just the feet. And they came across the floor. Ka-dum, 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 ka-dum. And they stopped. Oh, right there in front of the poor wee woman. And still she rocked. And still she sat. and still she saw and wished for company. And whoosh, again through the door there came a pair of long, skinny, jingly-jangly legs, and the legs kind of floated in through the door and across the room, and they came and landed right on that pair of galumphing feet. And they kind of stood there swaying in the wind as the woman rocked backwards and forwards. And still she sat, and still she saw, and still she wished for company. And whoosh, through the door there came a pair of broad, bonny hips. Oh, they were big and bulky, and those hips came in and they landed on those two skinny, jingly-jangly legs. And still the woman, oh, still she sat, and still she sewed, and still she wished for company. And then through the door there came a thin, skinny waist. Oh, it was so skinny. If you looked at it from the side, you could have barely seen it. And it came in, and it came in, and it floated in, and it landed on that pair of big, bonny, broad hips. And still the woman, still she sat, and still she sewed, still she wished for company. And whoosh, through the door there came a pair of broad, powerful shoulders. And the shoulders came in, swinging through the room, and they landed clunk on that poor wee skinny waist, right there in front of the poor wee woman. And still she sat, and still she sewed, and still she wished for company. And through the door there came a pair of long, skinkly, skankly arms. And those two arms, they came in disconnected and kind of dingly-dangly, and they and attached themselves to those big, broad shoulders. And they were just dangling there, blowing in the wind. And still she sat, and still she sewed, and still she wished for company. And through the door there came a pair of hands, big, powerful, crushing kind of hands. And the hands came in, and they came and they attached themselves to those two skinny, dingly-dangly arms. And still she sat, and still she sewed, and still she wished for company. And through the door there came a skinny, thin, scrawny little neck and landed right there in the middle of those big, broad shoulders. And still she sat, and still she sewed, and still she wished for company. And through the door there came a head, a big, powerful, bony, bald head with bulging eyes and a huge mouth filled with big, sharp teeth. And that head came and fixed itself on that skinny, scrawny neck. And still she sat, and still she sewed, and still she, oh, she had company. She said, excuse me, she said, but why are your feet so big and golfing? And the strange visitor said, much tramping, much tramping. Oh, I see. And why are your legs so long and thin and skinny? And the strange visitor said, too much water, too little meat. Oh, I see. And why are your hips so broad and round? And he said, much sitting, much sitting. Oh, I see, I see. But your waist is awful thin. Why is that? And the strange visitor said, too much water, too little meat. Oh, I see. But your shoulders, I mean, they're very bony, very broad. Why would that be? And he said, much lifting, much lifting. Oh, I see, I see. But your arms are very skinny and dingly dangly. What's the story there? He said, oh, too much water, too little meat. Oh, but your hands, so powerful big. Why would that be? And he said, much squeezing, much squeezing. Oh, I see, I see. And your neck, it's pitiful thin. Too much water, too little meat. Oh, but your head, now that's quite impressive. And it's very big. Why? And he said, much thinking, much thinking. Oh, I see, I see. Well, I was just wondering why you've come here to my wee cottage. Why have you come? And the strange visitor said, oh, he said, I have come for you. And the dark wood is still there. And the wee cottage is there too. And the dark door. And if you dare to go through, and it's very easy to go through now because the door is swinging on just one hinge. And if you go into that dark room, you'll see the rocking chair, and it's still rocking forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. But of the woman, there isn't a sign of her at all. Except, there on the ground, there's a needle and a piece of thread and some sewing, what looks like a piece of wrinkled winter's apple skin. So it's strange that the rocking chair is still rocking backwards and forwards. Oh, and the candle. Oh, the candle. That was blown out a long time ago. That's the story. So, good.
That
Nice.
was wonderful.
Scary.
Good to see, Benita, that you've had a quick shave. Very good. Okay, so I hope you've had, I've really enjoyed tonight. this is not normally something that I would sign up for, but I just think that the sheer variety of stories and the enthusiasm, the relish, the different ways that people have told the stories have been really hugely enjoyable. Thank you very much for everyone.
Roger,
Yes.
Sareka's got a story, a ghost story from Singapore, if everyone's game for another one.
Oh my goodness, a ghost story from Singapore. Well, I certainly want to hear that. Okay. So thank you very much, Sareka. Yeah, unmute yourself. This is great.
I have.
Good.
I didn't prepare this story, but it's something that happened to me, and I always wondered I want you all to tell me what you think about it.
Perfect.
Can you hear me? Nice and clear?
You're a little soft.
Let me see if I can. Is that better?
Yes.
Those of you who are not from Singapore would not know what the Hungry Ghost Month is all about. But in Singapore, once a year, they believe, the Taoist, the religion believes that the gates of hell open and all the spirits are allowed to come out. And there's one catch though, they have no mouths. So whatever they desire, they can only smell in. So all over Singapore at that time, you find, people getting together in the evenings, there's food laid out, there's a lot of things that are created with paper. For example, credit cards and Mercedes-Benzes and clothes and buildings, and these are actually given to the dead. And at the end of the day, it's burnt. So this is a very interesting time, and my story is, it's real, it's true rather. I used to teach in Singapore, and one particular school every June had a lot of Chinese scholars who came to join the school system. And there were these youngsters between the ages of maybe 14 to 16, full of life, and I was supposed to spend a couple of weeks with them so that they could practice their English and also get an immersion of the culture. So the head of the department told me, Mrs. Day, this time think of something really interesting to do with them, because we've already seen the Little India and we've seen, the Chinatown. So we need something more to get them interested. So it so happened that there was a docudrama which was just going to be released called The Hungry Ghost. And it was filmed by two youngsters, a girl from Singapore and a young guy from the United States. So I thought it would be a great thing to watch the documentary with these children and get them to write all the questions, because at the end of the movie, they were supposed to ask questions to the producer and to the director. So the children were, very outspoken. They're very excited. They'd never seen something like this, because it's not at all common in China. So as usual, one of the questions was to the director, did you have any strange experiences when you made this film? So the girl pointed to the young guy and he said, I think his name was John. John, why don't you answer this question? So he said, yes, but I don't believe in ghosts. I also don't know what happened to me, but I'd like to share it. So he said that when they started filming, they wanted to get some, real film from the cemeteries of Singapore. So it so happened they'd gone and met a Taoist priest, and he said, look, there are lots of graves which are not, been neglected for years. So once we do go there, and if you would like, you can come and you observe, you can film, but I have only one thing to tell you, do not trail away from us. Please make sure that you follow us. So he said, okay. And he said it was getting a bit boring, it was getting a bit cold. So he sat under a tree. And after a while, he said, I felt this kind of coldness and a kind of feeling that took me, something like a state of almost, meditative state. And there was a crackling sound as if something was behind him. And he said, I turned back. And as I did so, the Taoist priest called me and he said, John, what are you doing? I told you not to trail. Please hurry up and follow us. So he said, which I did. And I didn't think too much about it. But I could feel kind of like goosebumps all over when this happened, the crackling of the twigs around me. So the film was ready to be released, and it was, finally released in the theaters. And he said, except for one theater, all the other theaters, they would just put in the DVD and the film would start skipping, and they could not figure out what the reason was. Till somebody told them, remember, you have to leave the first few rows for the ghosts. That has not been happening in the theaters, and that's why the ghosts are not allowing the film to run through. So he says, okay, we sorted that part out. We had to tell all the, theaters, please leave the first 5 rows for the ghosts. And then he said there was a very big, kind of a function where all the people involved met, and the Taoist priest was there, and many other people who had helped them with the documentary. And then the two of them, the Taoist priest and John, they were walking down the aisle to go back to, after the function was over. And the priest said, John, I never told you one thing. Do you remember that night when we were in the cemetery and I had to call you back? He said, you know what? I never told you this, but do you know why? When I had made a kind of a protective ring around all of us. And at one point, I felt a tug on this kind of shield that I had made. And when I looked back, I saw that you were trailing far behind us. And all around you were hundreds and hundreds of spirits. Had I even hesitated looking for you by a second, you would have been possessed by one of them. And he said, so the tug of this shield was what made him look back. And well, John says, I don't know what to make of it, but there were so many things that went wrong with the production. And sometimes I wonder if it was the Big Brothers or the ghosts that did this. So I also always wondered, what was it that happened that night? I think it was Adam Road Cemetery, Joe Roger. So that's my story. I was hoping that I could hear more personal stories. The cat scared me off. Oh, that's a thing. My only cat left from Singapore, actually. She's 20 years old.
Wow.
She's from Ang Mo Kio Fish Market.
Yeah.
Rosemary probably would remember her because I picked her up and then nobody wanted to adopt her. I already had 5 cats, but she's still with us. Pick up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she obviously likes stories. She was a very attentive listener.
She's very social and she loves to.
I
Whenever we are on the computer, they have to come and put their paws on all the keys and kind of tell us that they're around.
It
So
was.
that's my story.
Thank you so much. And what a great way to have a true story and come from a very specific place. And,
I think that's why. But I'm really interested in ghost stories, and I hope I can collect some from India. There's so many.
Yeah.
At least, especially in the areas that I live in, the forest area, so there's lots of interesting stories from here too.
Wasn't there that story that you told, Sarek? I still remember. I don't remember the details. It was about your dad. Yeah, I remember that
story.
That was a really good story.
Another time.
Another time.
When we funny stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, be careful in the forest this weekend, please.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That's great.
Roger, with that. I jumped.
You did?
I did.
Yeah.
I should have done better. I should have known it was coming.
Where do you live, Sureka?
Me? I live in the border of Karnataka, actually on the Kerala side, but in the Western Ghats, towards Ooty and all.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So you definitely have a lot of stories from the forest.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I can't share them all.
I've been really impressed with the quality and the diversity of the telling, and I think it deserves a wider audience because for whatever reason, it's unusual that we only have 8 people on the screen. Normally we have a lot more. I realize that quite a number of people have switched their videos off. But thank you very much, all the tellers, for being with us this evening. A thoroughly enjoyable experience. Thank you very much, one and all. And we hope to see
Thank you,
you
Raj.
again. Good luck in Ireland.
Bye.
Yes.
Okay. I don't believe Boris is going to do anything at all, but we hope something can be sorted out for you guys.
Yes.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.